In Lloydminster, voters stayed the course and elected the Saskatchewan Party once again. But this time they invested their faith in Tim McMillan, a new face in local politics.
This is when Tim McMillan's career in politics started, 2007.
The thought of running for an elected position, it came about a month before I put my name in the hat for the nomination. And it was just an opportunity presented itself. My family had recently gone through a fairly difficult time, and I was surrounded by a very supportive community through that time, and it seemed like this would be a way that I'd like to serve these people in the Lloydminster constituency and maybe have a bigger part in Saskatchewan's future.
Although the Sask Party is fairly new, it has changed the landscape of Saskatchewan politics. In 1997, members of the Progressive Conservatives, Liberals, and Federal Reformers all got together to create a new party that would signify change for Saskatchewan. But they remained in opposition until 2007, when they overthrew a 16-year NDP reign.
Well, clearly, Saskatchewan is changing considerably, or has changed considerably. You know, it used to be a rural population, now becoming increasingly urban. It was a province where the NDP was very, very prominent right across the country, right across the province, but particularly in the urban areas. But there's been considerable disenchantment with the NDP and some of their policies, and a new party arose. And clearly, as we saw recently in Quebec, you know, people change their minds, and here clearly we've had a new party that's taken advantage of some of the disenchantment, particularly in rural area, but more recently, and to win power, they had to move into the urban areas, and they've done that.
Professor Blake has been around for this political evolution. After publishing various books on politics, he says the NDP isn't dead forever in Saskatchewan. It's only a matter of time before the party makes another rise. But as for this upcoming November election, experts say no chance.
I think voters are just less reliant on the security blanket that the NDP always provided. They'd be running on issues like keeping utility rates low and providing jobs from more of a public sector perspective than growing it through private sector means. I think there is a change in Saskatchewan, and that I'm seeing over the last little while. Whether it's as dramatic as some people suggest it is, I don't know. I guess we'll see. But it's growing. People want change, and I think anytime you have a government in for 16 years is not necessarily the most healthy thing.
The Sask Party we see now is a very different party than in 1997. There was much debate about where the ideology of the party lay.
What is it? You know, are they social conservatives? Are they sort of all anti-abortionists? Are they all opposed to gay marriage? Are they all sort of lunatics? And I think for a while the party suffered from whether it was the views that were there, and anytime you get a new party, there's always sort of people come to it hoping they can bring their ideas and have them, no matter how sort of far-fetched they are and how silly they are in most people's minds. But the new party seemed to attract the sort of the fringe element of society.
But that image seemed to disappear when Brad Wall was elected leader of the party in 2004. Then in the next election, won 51% of the Saskatchewan vote, translating into 38 of the 58 seats in the legislature. Since then, the party's image has changed drastically, and Professor Blake says probably on purpose.
The notion was for a very long time that they were angry old white men. And I think one of the reasons they selected Mr. Wall as leader several years back was because he did have that sort of more cosmopolitan appeal from an urban part of the province, although some people would dismiss, you know, Swift Current as urban, but clearly, you know, it's not a rural area in the way that some parts of the province is. And I think that that Mr. McMillan fits into that sort of the new image of the Sask Party. Young, educated, sort of cosmopolitan, family-oriented. It's sort of what the party wants to portray, that it's not a bunch of angry old white men. And I think, you know, to be young in the Sask Party is probably a virtue, but also an advantage.
I think it's his youth, his rural background, his business background. I think he's got actually a lot of attributes that are going forward. They're going to really help him grow in the ranks of this party, I suspect that there's bigger and better things to come for him.
But how much bigger and better is the question? Could Lloydminster be the constituency for the next Saskatchewan premier?
There are any number of future leaders in this party. Tim would be in that group, absolutely. But we're lucky to have a number of people, women and men, who could step forward and take more senior roles on. And we're fortunate that way. You want to have that kind of bench strength. Again, as a relatively young government, you want to be able to have people that can step into cabinet roles and handle those duties effectively. And Tim's certainly in that group.
So with other competition in the building for the top spot, what puts one MLA ahead of the other? Murray Mandrick has been covering politics in this building for 30 years. He says Tim McMillan has premier potential.
My concern in that regard for Tim McMillan would be, is he mainstream enough for Saskatchewan? Because even though Brad Wall is a pretty traditional conservative, and even conservative on a lot of social issues, he doesn't wear it as much, and I think he's less of an economic conservative than Tim McMillan is, and that might be one problem that he has. If Mr. McMillan has ambitions along that line, he's going to have to rein in a few policies and thoughts in terms of economic development in this province, I think, or at least expand them to the point where he has a better understanding of the importance of things like Crown corporations, and obviously being Minister of the Crown corporations is the best learning experience you're going to have for that.
Mr. McMillan's learning curve didn't start there, though. The toughest thing to pick up when you're a newly elected MLA is how to talk to the press. The first lesson came here with reporters from Newcap News.
It's always an interesting transition for people when they step into a position where they're all of a sudden going to have to be doing interviews with the media. We have certain expectations. We want a 10-second clip, and I would definitely say it was a transition for him. He started out quite uncomfortable, a little bit awkward, and I think he's definitely a lot more comfortable now, more informed and well-spoken.
This is no slight on him. This is a serious place for a lot of young politicians when they get here, and sometimes it takes a little while to reach that comfort zone, where they understand, I can be myself in this building, I can present my views, whatever they are, and I can be comfortable in my own skin doing interviews and doing other things. I think that was a real challenge for him, specifically early on. I think he decided that he was going to come here and be set a significantly partisan tone. And if he does have leadership aspirations beyond that, that's something else he'll have to tone down quite significantly. And to his credit, I think he certainly has since he's become minister. And I think he's been reasonably successful in sort of reinventing himself a little already.
That adaptability and determination was one of the things that caught the Premier's eye.
In Tim, here's somebody who had already worked very hard as an MLA on a number of local issues, whether it was his work with respect to the Bronson ponies or his work on behalf of Lloydminster constituency healthcare concerns. He was a strong voice within our caucus already. He stood out, and not just because he's tall. So I invited him to join the cabinet, and he's done an excellent job.
As Tim said earlier, he takes pride in knowing his file and being able to give interviews and answer questions on it, and that attention to detail hasn't gone unnoticed.
Tim takes the time to read everything, and he's very thorough with both presentations he's making to Cabinet, but also he's thorough about others, because of course other ministers come to Cabinet with their items, and he always has questions, and they're the right questions, and so you know that when Cabinet starts, Tim's been doing his homework, and he's ready both for his file and others, and that's why that's what he's brought to Cabinet.
These days, everyone in this building is gearing up to go into another election. The Saskatchewan voters hit the polls on November the 7th. Mr. McMillan is keen to make his case in Lloydminster. During the last election, he claims he knocked on every door in Lloydminster twice, along with a big list of community events. He says there's no better way to get in touch with this community.
I think it's a valuable part of the process that we have 4 years to do what we said we were going to do in the last campaign, and we've largely accomplished all our goals, everything that was in our platform. And we now get an opportunity to put forward new ideas.
He had this riding sewn up in the last election, and traditionally, voters here elect Conservatives, but he's not looking beyond November 7th yet.
I will serve at the Premier's pleasure if he would like me back in Cabinet at any point after the election. I'd be very keen to do it, but those are decisions he makes alone.
Being in cabinet does have one downfall. Regina is a 5-hour drive from Lloydminster, and both places require serious time commitments.
I spend a lot of time on the road, and I try and make a very large commitment to both worlds, because I have to be in Regina to represent the people of Lloydminster when appropriate, and I also have to and want to be back in my constituency, talking to my constituents and being available at town hall meetings and community events.
Since he's been elected into cabinet, his family has had to find a residence in Regina. We're going to meet them on the other side of this break.